next one. Time.
Okay. So I have that. So
Yeah, see, especially and they were talking earlier from like the finance.
Is that New England?
Educated.
Okay. I got Bible. And they were Bible is important.
Definitely not education training.
And we wanted to talk about it. And then, yeah, I have in my note for Mary was the conversation how they were because that's something we talked about in class. We talked about how homeschooling, definitely not. They read a lot of philosophy about how something you do in your conversion. Oh yeah, there's that guy who said like the worst thing in the world would be to like. I said this was education. I hope it doesn't come for like 100 years. I don't remember just the end like the first thing. Yeah. The inheritance thing is like and like education is definitely like in the realm of that's where you got like the I don't want individual and like schools.
Sounds like a reasonable inference. Alright, this time. Who has an answer? Let's let Olivia go.
Sorry. So we talked about how education in the South was seen as a private affair. So a lot of times for upper class men, they could be educated from a tutor or the governess. Sometimes if families didn't have enough money, they would join their money together to hire a tutor for maybe like 6 or 10 kids.
Right.
Also, we talked about how like the demographics were in the South. People were more spread out, so it really wasn't even efficient to have lots of schools.
Right.
So we did that.
Yeah, Jesse.
I said a lot of the teachings were based from the Bible and like religious exercises, and then it was mainly like a subset or a form of like the schooling that they had in England with the governesses and things.
Okay. How strong was the Anglican Church in the South?
I feel like Southern Baptists are the big thing. So
during the time, I mean, there was religious training. It wasn't quite as pronounced as it was in New England. but yet your top books generally would be religious.
Sort of going off of the religious aspect, we talked about universities in the South at this point were probably mostly for like seminary. There wasn't a whole lot of university training besides that, so. Yeah.
Anybody want to add on? Correct anything? Yep.
Our funding for the schools too was more of like a social, not a government or structured system where there would be like a philanthropist, I think, that would choose to fund the schools, or they would have like the field schools, which is kind of like what you were saying, like they would take like, their surplus income over time to like build the schools, and it was by no means like run by the government at that point.
Does anybody remember what those were called? That was a long time ago. That's fine, you have to go look at it. Those were called your endowed free schools, which was when a philanthropic person died, left their estate for the establishment of a school in the community. If you lived there, it was generally the education jackpot of living in the South. Olivia, you had mentioned homeschooling and private tutoring, correct? Does anybody remember where the tutors would generally come from?
Were they like in Europe? English tutors?
Right.
Rather than from the American colonies. Because I think the upper echelons of like colonial era Southern society like had stronger ties to England, or like I guess wanted to like replicate the social order.
Right,
over there.
right, yeah, that's a very good analysis. What about the university system, or college system in the South?
There was one in Mary.
Right, it was when you were married. And why would you go there? It had been mentioned already. For religious studies, right? So if you were an upper class individual who didn't really want to become a priest, what were your options for higher education?
Go abroad.
Right. Yeah, for the most part, people went abroad pretty heavily. If you were an upper class Southerner, you would go abroad for your schooling, and usually that was big up until about 1750 or so, and then by then we had kind of pulled away from England enough and had enough of our institutions that that wasn't quite so
I have
necessary.
a question. Was New England are the ones that had like the little primers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure, because I thought about that and then they corrected.
It was called the New England Primer.
That would be handy to know.
All right, does anybody else have any final comments on this one before we move to our next individual? All right, cool. You all can switch.
Just hit the red button again.